So you're probably already thinking that this video has a purpose to defend Chris Chan. And even though I think that a lot of people should hear this, it certainly is directed to people who defend him. Let me do a really quick disclaimer that I guess is going to act as a spoiler for the question, but he acted on his own volition. Also, I'm addressing as a he because I don't think he made the decision by himself. As you may know, there was a lot of trolls who were involved. They understood his situation. He needs to take full responsibility and suffer the consequences accordingly as everyone else does. But I would say that he takes 99% on this, and not because the 1% is an excuse, but rather the reason why we gotta feel slightly bad for him. I'm 22, very young person I would say, and it's incredibly easy for me to get angry really quick and just start insulting everyone because it makes me feel good. If you relate to that, give me a few minutes. Because I recently watched an Abba and Preach video, a channel that I absolutely love, and they talk about all these social issues, yada yada yada. And one thing that amazingly connected, and it had a really good timing because I watched both videos about Chris Chan on Boblax and about Abba and Preach on the exact same day. And my reaction to Chris Chan was like, oh, this is so vile, so disgusting, and it still is. But I immediately found a solution to just offend him, insult him, and made me feel good. And even clearly he has to suffer for what he did. The Abba and Preach video made me question if that's all, right? There's the 1%, and it's not really because I'm trying to defend the guy, but rather to try to understand why the people do this, and if his autism really had anything to do with this. So the video that is in question is about, really quick, was about a guy who admitted to be racist for a few, for a good time. And even though it's an impressive video, it wasn't the fact that it was about race that really stuck around. It was the reaction of Abba and Preach. And one thing that they said specifically, or they talked about, is how different backgrounds make people do really evil shit. I saw all over the comments, right? How disgusting, I could never do this in a million years. And I understood this feeling that we couldn't, I think for people who have mothers at least, we are privileged enough for that. We can see how disgusting it is because we can put it in our situation and we would never do that. But I'm pretty sure if you ask Chris Chan 20 years ago if he would do any of that, he would also say that. Now, this is not to say that you and me, we're gonna at some point have to do that vile shit that he did. But it made me question about if backgrounds here do affect. I don't think it even has to do with autism. Everyone's talking about autism, and I think this is my main point. I think it has to do with his background. And it isn't even about the parenting or anything like that. As you may know, he was affected by trolls. And even though it wasn't the trolls who committed the action, and that's why I think he acted on his own volition, even though he has his issues. Not everyone is dealt with a good hand of cards. And an example that I like to put out is the example of people who, like we had the recent news with Raul Zita, right? Or EDP even. People who will certainly do harm to these children. Now, there are certainly various types of people who try to commit these crimes and different, let's say, personality profiles. But there's a lot of them who don't want to hurt people. This doesn't excuse them, of course, but imagine being born like that. And that's why I think that there's that 1% that makes me feel bad for Chris Chan, even though I recognize his full responsibility. I was dealt with a really good hand of cards. I mean, if this was poker, man, I got a double fucking ace. But him, he has like a 2 and a 9. He can't do shit with that. And again, this is not to say that there's an excuse, because in the end of the day, there's always a choice. And he was high functioning as far as I know at the very least. But goddamn, it makes me have to recognize that the evil is not as one-sided as I thought. Even with the historical characters that we had that turned to be complete monsters. As children, they were very lovable. They were people who had really good perception of the world. And sometimes due to circumstances, how they live their lives and what people do to them, it turns them into monsters that they never recognize. And that's what I think about this whole Chris Chan thing. That it is absolutely fair for you, and I think everyone has to have the responsibility to understand that this is atrocious and shouldn't happen. People have to suffer the consequence no matter who you are. But we do talk from a privileged spot. Slightly privileged. And it has nothing to do with this, really. What it has to do, and not even with parents, it just has to do with your uprising. Did you ever have to fend off people? Did you have to carry a knife because you were at danger at all times? There's a lot of people who carry that kind of life. So when these people turn to a life of criminality, sometimes it's understandable, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe they're lost causes, they're an exception to the rule, but there's people who, I don't think they're born like that, but they seek evil in everything, and they take some sort of enjoyment out of that shit, which is really weird to see, but it happens. But Chris Chan, do I honestly put him in this box? No. So to answer the question, I would say that he's a mix of both. Is he guilty for what he did, and is he a disturbed soul? Of course, right? And he did something bad. He's certainly not the victim of the crime that he committed, but he is certainly a victim of us. And I'm not going to go into a Joker monologue, and I don't want to go too basic here, but I think it's understandable to you that those trolls had some influence on it, that they didn't have good examples. As Bob Black said, and very beautifully, he was desensitized from reality. He didn't understand what kind of relationship should he have with the mother, because this whole idea of sex, and everyone has to have it, really got him to a level that shouldn't happen. And that we cannot blame 100%. And even us, people who didn't do shit to counter this, we are responsible for that. Now, again, I don't know how many times I have to put out disclaimer. I will repeat it as many times as it has to. He has to go in jail. And again, he acted on his own volition. But it's hard to not feel like we had some sort of kind of blame. At the very least, the trolls, the people who took advantage of that situation. And I'm tired of seeing people who do something bad, of course, and they deserve punishment. But there's the people who caused it, and they're walking free. And you would look out of your window and say, like, he's a cool guy. But he would be, imagine if he was the troll that initially influenced Chris Chan to become today's Chris Chan. And if people, for example, like I said, who harm children, they are in fact born like that, just imagine that shit. That you have to have self-control, because if you don't, you're gonna harm a child and you're gonna go to jail, and rightfully so. But imagine the amount of self-control that you gotta have. I don't know, I don't even have good fucking bad times, like I don't have a good sleep schedule. But imagine having to fight off something that every day tells you that what you want is the thing that is right. And even though how many times you tell your brain, this is wrong, this is fucked up, don't do this, imagine living with that kind of hell. Don't know if Chris Chan was the example. I'm not him. I truly don't know if that's what happened. But just the mere fact of being dealt with a really good hand of cards, you know what I'm saying? Like, with all the privilege that I got, and it has nothing to do, again, with skin color or anything like that. Just the mere fact that I didn't have anything in my brain trying to fight off I don't have to fight any urges. It's amazing. And I think you and me, we gotta be thankful for that. But when it comes to this, I think there's a lot of people who defend him, but what they do lack is some sort of intellectual discipline. And this is not an insult even. It's just the mere fact that people don't know how to process what they feel. And there's a lot of people who don't know that separation of saying that he is responsible, but that there's also the other side that we're not equating. To a lot of people, it's hard to be logical. And I do understand it's kind of counter nature. For history, people have been in tribes and defending what you believe is the correct thing to do, and at least that's the most natural thing to do. But if you're part of the people who you think you're defending him, reconsider this. Are you truly defending him, or you just feel bad? Because I started off with that energy, again, 22-year-old guy just obviously explodes at everything because it makes me angry, because it truly made me angry. I wasn't, fronting or anything like that. I wasn't faking that shit, but then I watched that video and it made me put things into question. I wasn't born that way though. And I understand autism doesn't make him do that. Bob Black's explained it pretty well, that he's, autistic himself, and he knows how to separate the things in line. Even though there's different levels of severity when it comes to autism, he was high functioning. So I guess the conclusion would be that yes, he needs to take full responsibility for what he did, but he is also a victim of circumstance. There were trolls that influenced, and no matter how much you tell me they weren't the ones who made him do that, correct, but they certainly did help. And that's kind of fucked up. That's really, really fucked up to me. But I would really like for you to drop the comments in the section, because I would really like to know if I'm the only one who feels exactly like this. And if you give yourself some time to think about it, do you put that into question? Do you understand that maybe now, now that you talk about it, yes, he did have a really fucked up chance, let's say, right, to be a good person. Because I don't know. I don't think evil is just born out of thin air, right? There's always consequences in life that makes people evil. And I gotta feel bad for Chris Chan, man. So, can he be a victim? I guess so. But he's not really a victim as an excuse to what he did. He's still the aggressor as well. So, I just hope that you end this video understanding that I'm not trying to defend him. If anything, this is a video to help people who are defending him understand that he still needs to take full responsibility, even though I understand what you're feeling. I don't know if he had any diehard fans, let's say like that, but I think there were people who cared for him. And it must be heartbreaking to see him in this situation. But I don't think you have to be family or friends to understand this emotion. It's just, again, imagine something in your life that you try to fight off, but you really can't. Still gotta suffer. You still gotta suffer the consequences because there's not the Wild West anymore. But it still makes me thoughtful at the very least. So thank you so much for watching and consider subscribing. I'm sorry if this is a heavy topic, but I felt like I had to say something. So thank you so much for watching and see you next time.